People are always in search of hope, be it for a better life or happiness or for the afterlife. Tonight, Emil is going to obliterate all hope that you may have for the afterlife. Or he'll just give you something to think about with his speech, Dancing with Butterflies. That was a really wussy handshake. Do it again. Better.
In 2008, Dr. Emil Alexander, a very respected neurosurgeon, was inflicted with a type of meningitis. This particular bacteria had affected his brain. He fell into a coma. 7 days later, he had been revived, and he was telling people about his experience, that he had experienced the afterlife. Being a neurosurgeon, somewhat of a scientist, Newsweek found this fascinating, and they featured an article on him called "Heaven is Real." This is important because this is an attempt to verify a claim of faith. And when people feel that their faith is verified, they feel that they're empowered by it, and then they feel that they should impose it on others. And that's wrong, because we should all be free of faith, even, because we want to be. Dr. Alexander's claim rests solely on the idea that his cerebral cortex had been completely shut down during his coma, rendered inactive, basically dead. This is the part of our brain that is responsible for our consciousness, as we know it. What he's saying is his cerebral cortex, the part of his brain that's responsible for consciousness, had been completely shut down, yet his consciousness was still there, somewhere. He had experienced something, some beautiful magnificence. He was dancing with butterflies. His claim that his cerebral cortex had been shut down was a result of a CT scan. He's a smart guy, having knowledge of neuroscience and how the brain works. He has made a huge flaw. The flaw is that a CT scan cannot tell you whether or not your cerebral cortex has been rendered inactive. In all the interviews I had watched, all the articles I had read, he's never once mentioned having an fMRI, a PET, or an EEG. These are tests that are used to measure neurological activity. He should know better. Still, he remains firm. His cerebral cortex had been shut down. This seems to be more like an assumption rather than a fact. We also know something about life, that when living tissue dies, it can no longer be reanimated. So what he's saying is that his cerebral cortex had shut down and then had become reanimated. So I want to ask just a hypothetical question here, or to get you to think about this. What seems more likely? That his brain had shut down completely, that cerebral cortex had shut down entirely. After 7 days, it didn't deteriorate, didn't rot or anything, but was able to reanimate itself, to revive itself. And he's able to be fully intelligible. He's suffered no brain damage whatsoever. He's got full mental capacity. He's even writing a book called Proof of Heaven. Or is it that he's under a misapprehension? He's basing this all on an assumption that his brain shut down when it really didn't. That he just had his brain become weak for a while, fell into a coma, he recovered, and experienced something. When we think about it that way, it seems more likely that he just fell into a coma, that his brain was still active. I'm not saying that that's the case, but it seems very improbable that he's this one instance where dead tissue had reanimated itself. Nevertheless, he still experienced something. I believe that his brain was active the whole time. So how do we account for his experience? When you read the account of his experience that's featured in Newsweek, and he'll talk about it in various interviews on YouTube or other places you can look online, it seems very comparable to psychedelic experiences. I've never been on psychedelics, I have no interest in doing it, but I did study it and I looked into it, and I've read accounts, first-hand accounts of what psychedelic trips are like. And I was very specific on this. I read about DMT. And DMT is a compound that exists in many plants. It exists in our brain as a neurotransmitter. When activated or released, this will cause us to have a psychedelic experience. Now, it's possible, and we have to admit this, that his brain was fully active, that it had developed an abundance of DMT, and it had released it, and this caused him to experience what he had experienced, dancing with butterflies. There's also this idea that there's an anesthetic used on him called ketamine. Ketamine is used to protect the brain in an incident of trauma. It's very likely that this was used on him and that this had caused a psychedelic experience as well. So he's basing this whole idea on the premise that his cerebral cortex had been inactive, which I think is very implausible, and that he had somehow had a transcendental experience with his consciousness and experienced an afterlife, or heaven, as you put it. But there comes a point when he has to admit that this is all based on assumption. He is being a bit quixotic. This is important. We all want to have hope. We all want to believe in the afterlife. We all hope for something more, that things get better even after this world. But we do have to face the facts. I'm not saying that he's a liar, but it seems that he's being intentionally deceptive, hiding the facts, not admitting the truth of things. And he should know better as a neurological surgeon, right? What's important is whether we have hope in something beyond us in the afterlife, the fact remains. The greatest fact of all that we should cherish is that just because someone says it doesn't mean it's true. Thank you.
We're doing a QA session?
Oh, yeah, we're doing a Q&A. Okay, you got to time it. 2 to 3 minutes. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, what time then?
Yeah, 2 to 3 minutes for the Q&A.
Okay.
You can go after.
Yeah, my question is, was he on oxygen during this time?
You know, that's one of the things about it, is he's very skimpy on the details. He's very vivid about his experience, but when it comes to, did you receive anything besides the CT scan? It's like the information's not there. All of the way he was treated in the medical field doesn't exist. That information is not there. At least he's not releasing it. Maybe in his book.
Have you ever had any spiritual experiences that would support you on the other side of the argument?
Have I had a personal one? Yes. It didn't involve drugs or anything. I had a more of an in-the-moment experience and feeling the importance of life and everything. It wasn't an afterlife experience. It was just more of a we are all united kind of experience. Rich?
Can you categorically disprove his theory?
For one, that's not a theory. He's making a claim. A theory is something different. But you cannot disprove a negative. I mean, for example, I can come and say I have $1 million in my backyard buried. Well, you can't disprove it. I mean, unless you go and dig it out. But you can't disprove it. Just the same way, I can't go into his head and see whether or not this is something he actually experienced. I can't go and experience what he had experienced. And even if I went through the same thing he did, suffered the same affliction and everything, I still have those doubts. I still have to admit that I had no way of knowing that my brain shut down. I have to be honest about that and willing to admit it.
What did you say that it was something was likely used on him that could have
Ketamine?
ketamine.
It's ketamine, and then there's DMT. I have the actual names written down. I just wanted to use the prefix because the names are long and it probably would have eaten a minute of my speech. Chris?
Is my great-grandpa in this room, and if so, what is he saying?
I don't think he's in this room, but if he was, man, I really don't want to experience the afterlife. This is better than the afterlife. Not to say anything bad about this place, but, you know, I mean, I love Toastmasters, but if I can be anywhere, you know, I'm going to be riding on a turtle lion, fighting other turtle lions on a rainbow, dancing with butterflies. Any other questions? All right, thank you.